my thoughts and fantasy, and then I set the limit with the ways of how I feel. I've been conformed by a school and just like you, but I know better, 'cause I searched and found the truth. Perhaps it is true that we're living in these times where naturally so many of us are drawn to eating much lighter and such good things, and that many people experience feeling sort of mind foggy and things like that, and for no sort of obvious reason. And yeah, and that's exactly how I feel. I want to record a video, I want to share something, and I don't know where to begin. And it's like impossible. It's the easiest thing in the world, and I've done it before several times. And some other times in Danish language, it was extremely liked by some friends, and they thought it was even funny and super informative and so well done and da da da. And here I am, and I can't do it. I can't do it. So this is just experimental. Who knows if I post this or not? But let's just stick to what I love so much, what I have been fighting for so much, to be authentic. So this is completely authentic. So I guess this is just gonna be a hangout with Smillas. You're gonna now hang out with me. Too bad, because you're already here. You can't escape now. Yes, you can. You can just stop the video and say, fuck off, Smillas. Anyway, so I did try to record this yesterday, and I actually thought that I totally managed, and it didn't feel like satisfactory or anything. But then when I pressed stop and looked in the library for my recording, it didn't exist anywhere. However that works, I don't know. So, okay, then, instead of getting upset, I usually prefer to think that, okay, that was meant to be. Yeah, so today I would like to share a story, because particularly I think that we live in really weird times, and at the same time very interesting times. And yes, excuse me, I'm doing something down here. As I have mentioned in other videos and shown. Yeah, what is this, you might ask? This is me rolling a cigarette out of very thin paper, same as joint paper, because this just tastes the best and it smokes and smells the least. No musician friend pointed that out to me, that he said, you're the only person who gets to smoke regular cigarettes in my room. And I thought, what? Regular cigarettes? What? Otherwise people only smoke joints or what? And he said, no. Otherwise, he said he himself only smokes rollies. And then he showed me that he rolls his cigarettes out of the same paper as joints. It's a very thin paper that you can almost see through. And that doesn't smell. Interesting. Interesting for a world who is turning totally non-smoking more and more. Which is good. Which is very good. I'm completely ridiculous here, and but anyway, I'm gonna try to share. Okay, so I'm not liking this at all. So maybe I should post it, just because I don't like none of this so far. Okay, but the story I was trying to share yesterday was that The reason have come to like finally, okay, come on now, I finally have to share this. It's actually many reasons. The latest reason would be that I have been diving so deep into near-death experience stories. And of course, one of the best ways that you can do that is to have access to people that you can look at them and listen to them, sort of live, at least on video, of them telling their story. Because then you get a feeling essence of the person as you're seeing them and listening to them at the same time. And so I must have consumed about 1,000 of those, or I don't know, hundreds of them. And all my life, I've always been convinced, when people ask the question, do you believe in God? Then my answer was always, no, I don't believe in the Bible fairy tales kind of things. But I know that there is something. So eventually I shortened this answer, and it eventually just became that no, I believe in energy. But then, now looking back, I believe in energy. What kind of nonsense answer is that actually? Okay, yes, I know energy. I don't have to believe in energy, first of all. Second of all, I believe in energy when you're answering about God. A subject like that, then basically it's like saying, in other words, I believe in whatever, because bad shit is energy, good shit is energy, so you haven't really answered the question at all, actually. I believe it still says on my Facebook profile that I don't really use anymore. I've deleted all the apps, and if I occasionally sometimes go on Facebook for whatever reason, it's rare, then it's been rare since some years, then I just go on the browser. I don't use the app, so although it's ridiculous, once the app has been installed, whether on your laptop or on your phone, then it installs a little spyware kind of thing on your thing, and when you delete the app, this spyware does not get deleted. In fact, on my smartphone I can see that it's not even possible to delete Facebook. The only thing that it offers you is that you can have some old original something like that version, light or beta, or I don't remember, something like that. So anyway, so I've been watching all these stories, consuming all this, diving so deep into near-death experiences, which I would rather call temporary death experiences. Because, it's not that the people come near death. Actually, most of them really die and are clinically dead. And then for some whatever weird, miraculous, unexplainable reason, in too many cases, people just come back. And, they're trying to revive the person, or many times the doctor has given up, and, that's it. The person is dead. For whatever reason, people come back. Yeah, well, anyway, for whatever reason they come back. In most cases it is because the doctors have become so good at resuscitating people with cardiac arrest, so that's something that we've been getting better at since the last, about 40 years or so, and so 40 years. But anyway, it's a very serious topic, what they call the NDE, near-death experience, typical Americans, NDE. What's the problem? Why can't you just say the whole sentence? Your attention span has gotten so fucked that you can't even focus on your own speaking. I hate the shortenings. But okay, this is the world we live in. Near-death experience, NDE. Well, there is 50 years of research in that field. And there is, for example, let's see, I tried to take notes here. For example, the UVA Medical Center has a channel on YouTube also. UVA Medical Center Hours. And there you got 50 years of research on life after death. And, well, the internet is full of it. It's not just YouTube, it's just the internet is full of it. By now there is so many books. What finally for me became the coolest thing, I mean, first of all, I consumed quite a lot of these stories. I had already gone down that rabbit hole quite some. And I still felt like, well, you know, there is this higher this higher infinite consciousness, this higher awareness, this what I used to call just energy, obviously. Well, I felt pretty much sure that there would be no, and still I'm doubting, there would be no, you know, Jesus, and there would be no entity, as in a personified kind of figure that would then be a god. I thought, no, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, we have this form when we're here, but come on, look at the whole creation. I mean, why to think that we are like the, but okay, apparently we are the really special thing here in the existence, at least one of the most special things. And so, yeah, created in his image apparently means that, yeah, he is a person kind of looking thing. At first I thought that when people die, then this energy just takes shape and form according to what the deceased person knows and can relate to, and that possibly, I thought, and that possibly the longer they are there in this other realm, if you want to call it heaven, whatever, that eventually this form gradually, slowly, sort of not dissolves, but, you know, becomes just this energy that has no shape like us or anything, and that you gradually are merging with it, and finally the energy is one again. That's what I thought. But it seems that this could still be true, but there is this huge figure that is a god, and people have felt the hands on their body as a big as half of their own body kind of thing, approximately, where they have felt hands come and grab around their body and put them somewhere. The last one I heard was a guy telling how he just felt these hands around him, like as if he was the tiniest baby and had the mega biggest daddy. And he took him and he basically put him back in his body. Wow. This is so, I have to like really, so many times I have to really be sitting and looking at this person telling their story, being in that energy of someone that is so clearly not telling fantasies or lies or anything like that. It's so clearly real and true, and they're so clearly completely sane and healthy and sharp and intelligent and all that. And then I can feel the realness, but then too many times, also depending on who I might speak to, it just starts to feel like I must have dreamt something. I must have like had the most vivid dream last night or something. This just can't be real, like, but it is. It is real. And I guess worst of all about if it's real or not is that I have myself have had several mystical experiences throughout my life, and I know since I was very little that when we die, we don't finish and that's it. Yeah, I must have been like 5 years old when I asked my grandma what happens after we die. And her answer just made it clear to little me that, oh, I remember looking up at her and concluding, well, she doesn't know. And feeling kind of surprised about that she doesn't know. because she told me that nothing happens. That's just it. There's nothing more. It's just finished, over. Just, and little 4-year-old me, 5-year-old me, whatever, looking at her thinking like, wow, she doesn't know. Okay, well, whatever. And then you go on. As a kid, you don't speculate about it. You just register, make your impression, and that's it. And on to the next thing. And so, but I have memories way before that, and that's another subject in itself, because when someone I know with a PhD tells me it's impossible that you have any memories from before 4 years old, that this is just what science says, well, I'm sorry, but science is, so poor anyway, so, like, come on, man, reductive materialism, science has no explanation for consciousness. But that is then the mainstream science. That is the science that is accessible anywhere to anyone. That is the science bullshit facts that are still being taught. I mean, even this girl has a PhD, not in science, but when you have someone with a PhD, I know how the whole world reacts to that. If I come anywhere and I say I have a PhD, then everyone's listening to everything I say. And it's as if they just believe I know everything. And that's just the average human being. And I'm just like, wow, there's a person with a PhD standing in front of me telling me, like, you don't exist, actually. I mean, she could have just told me that, it would have been just as real. And I'm like, wow, you're telling me that I don't have what I have. Hello? How is that possible? It's like you could have just told me that, look, you've never been 1 year old or 4 years old. It would be just as realistic, And so the thing is that it's not the earliest memory, but like a proper memory, my earliest memory is that it was the first time that I saw the candle of a flame. The candle. Right. The flame of a candle. Anyway. The first time that I see a flame on a candle. And what caught my attention and what got me was the blue in the flame. The minute I laid eyes on that, I knew that, I just have to somehow kind of reach for that and it will take me into another space, kind of thing. Which, that was what I was feeling like, being, so young, like way before we even speak, actually. So this is just, I remember being in that position, being the one looking at that blue candle. And I remember what I was expecting, what I was feeling, all of that. And today I'm obviously so much older and I have all these words. So today I could say it so much better than I just did. I could say, well, the first time I saw the blue in a candle, I was convinced that this will take me into another realm. So, well, so then 8 years passed by and I'm in Denmark, 9 years old. And my grandma decides to sort of entertain me with giving me, as she said, the family albums, that I can look through the family photo albums. And then I get an album and I open it up and I flip a few pages and I get really disappointed because, and I complained out loud, but this is not the family album, this is only pictures of me. I don't want to see pictures of me. She calmed me down with that. Of course, then the next album would be, of them, of all the others, of the family. And so I calmed down and even got to sort of enjoy looking at all these pictures of me. And then at some point I come to a black and white picture where I'm sitting in this 70s type of old, it's shaped like this sofa chair, armchair that goes out like that at the top and then it goes in and then you get the armrest, this classical design, and it's black and white and I'm sitting in it and sort of behind me, as if instead of a pillow, there's this gigantic teddy bear. I mean, I must have been like, if this was the teddy bear, my hand was the teddy bear, then I was probably like the size of my thumb. huge teddy bear, and I recognized it immediately. And I got so puzzled by that also immediately, because I knew that this teddy bear, we didn't have this teddy bear anywhere, so I found it strange how come I remembered it if we didn't have it. How do I mean, obviously it was somewhere because I see it right there, but we didn't have it, and it wasn't in any of my friends' houses, and it wasn't in any of the places that I was babysitted. It basically didn't exist anywhere in any of our places related to us. So that was really strange. And I said out loud to my grandma, wow, I remember this teddy bear, but from where? And then I continue. My grandma is busy doing whatever, and so I continue flipping the page, and I realize that it's a series of pictures from like a photo shooting. And so I see in the next picture that, oh wow, it's a photo shooting, and there's a table next to me with a birthday cake. And then I look at the next picture, and in the next picture, little baby me, apparently 1 year old, because there's only one candle on the cake, notices the candle on the cake in the picture. And so you see baby me looking at the picture and like completely like fascinated with this thing. And in the next picture, little baby me has gotten up from the sitting position and is now like standing, leaning against the armrest of the chair and sort of trying to get to this candle. And that's when my memory connected with the pictures. And I shouted out, oh, I remember this! And my grandma is busy doing her thing, not really minding me. So I continue, I flip to the next picture. And in the next picture, I have my hand out to reach for the blue in the flame. And so in the next picture after that, my finger is literally sitting in the flame. And the next picture after that, my finger is in my mouth. And I'm looking really kind of mind-boggled, just surprised, and wow, it hurt me. It didn't, and I was like, fuck yeah, and it burned me. I was like, yeah, I thought it would take me into another realm, and it just burned me. And the pictures are black and white, so it's not like the picture colors or anything reminded me of the blue. This was just a clear memory that I had of this blue thing in the flame. And one thing that I noticed throughout life is that, well, yeah, if there is something that makes a huge impression on a little one, then it doesn't matter how young you are, you're going to remember that. It becomes a memory. And so this is why this became a memory, because this was something that just completely, almost like, it disappointed me so much. I was so surprised that it just hurt my finger instead of making me appear in another space. This was just very strange to little baby me. And so I find this memory absolutely something that I just had to share finally. And yeah, sharing on my YouTube channel is almost a joke, because I'm not a YouTuber, and so I haven't built up any audience. So like 3 people are gonna see this video. But then I hope that these 3 people will click like and make a comment, and maybe even share the video, because I don't know, I'm weird and the story is weird, or I don't know. So anyway, now I need some hot water in my tea, and I so have to smoke my cigarette finally. I'm carrying you around here, and you got some 3 long legs. So you're really like hanging out with me. You're even on my height and everything, just to keep it fair. And so, yeah, here I'm boiling some water for tea. Maybe you can have one also, and then we hang out, or you drink your water or your beer or wine, or eat your lollipop. So yeah, this is weird me with my weird memory, and thank God that I don't have to even feel upset about someone telling me that this is my imagination, or I don't know what the PhD person I know was trying to say actually. Obviously I have a memory, obviously I have pictures it was the pictures that showed me that I was 1 year old. I myself just had the memory and I had no idea what age had to do with this memory at all until I saw those pictures that were a literal series documenting my memory, showing me that I was 1 year old. I mean, you could even see on Baby Me that I was 1 year old. You hardly needed the cake to tell you that I was 1 year old. So yeah, that's pretty insane. So anyway, but I don't have to be upset about it because I know that the memory does not even exist inside the body, that we basically just have receptors. And those receptors are not just in our brain, they're in our heart, they're all over our body, they're everywhere. We have receptors, and these receptors connect like an antenna to this ether. And to the consciousness of the cosmos, of the existence, and that's where everything is stored. And I guess maybe that is also what the Aztec records are, actually, so that everything you experience goes in there. Everything that has ever happened, everything that has ever been, or whatever, it's all there. And so that would also explain how come people can connect to some knowledge that isn't theirs, or have some get hypnotized and access their past lives, or how you could sort of telepathically style send a message, get somebody's attention who is in a completely other country, make them call you, or make them go to check their mail or whatever. There is also something called the Silva method that is also really old, I think also from the 50s, where basically a guy developed a sort of a technique method to use this I was gonna say what option, or but yeah, it is actually, it is an option. So could you come closer to me? Could you come closer to me? All this stuff sounds too far out there, and it is hard even for me who has had experiences like what I just told you. And so for that, I just feel like, yes, when there comes a neurosurgeon like this Dr. Eben Alexander, who basically died because he had an aggressive bacterial E. coli meningitis that basically ate up his brain. So his neocortex was too destroyed to experience anything, and there were several doctors and neuro guys around to to register this and to, of course, put it in his medical files and stuff. And so he was, to them he was dead. To them, if he would somehow physically survive, he would just be a vegetable for the rest of his life. Yet he's not. Against all odds, what they call miraculously, basically he completely healed and completely recuperated, which is by what the neurologist and and neurosurgeon people, what they know, what they've learned, what is being taught, according to all that, it's not possible. And they have never had anyone survive from this, and well, survive maybe, but not come out of it healthy and present and sane and even sharper than before, and enlightened on top of everything. And so, of course, he has this whole fascinating story about being on the other side. And of course, he then wrote a book about it, which he calls Proof of Heaven. But then, like he says it, that he had he had a lot of people helping him to write this book, and he says that some of these people were really hardcore but open-minded skeptics of professionals. So, and since he himself is a neurosurgeon, then obviously that was neurologists and other neurosurgeons and what have you, of people that are really knowledgeable and know what they're talking about. So that's great. And so someone like him also says that, well, he was sure that he knew that, you know, the consciousness is created in the brain. And when the brain dies, then the consciousness ceases to exist because it is created by the brain. Well, and now he admits that, well, now he knows that that is not true. That the consciousness does not come from the brain. That it somehow comes from out there. And so not only does someone like that come back and confirm to us that, look, man, against all my belief, I had this experience, now I know better. But also, we have millions of near-death experiences out there, of which the majority actually is from our present day, like since the last 40, 50 years, since we became so good at bringing people back to life and all that. So that's interesting. But then it also goes way back, like thousands of years. There was Plato's encounter of the Armenian soldier, which sounds exactly like the stories of our soldiers that died and came back of our today, of our times. And in general, we just find similarities in all the writings of mystics and prophets, in the Quran, in the Bible. So yeah, there actually is no doubt. The only problem we have left is that we are raised to not believe in these things, and so it's really hard to wrap our minds around this stuff. So yeah, also another thing that relates to the same thing is that there is a dry throat here. No. And don't blame it on my smoking. No, so that there is more than 25,000 cases at the University of Virginia of reports of children having memories of past lives. And I saw a longish documentary about that, and then I saw a shorter one that was extremely similar, where basically a family has a child and the child keeps saying these weird things. And so eventually, you know, first they kind of don't listen to it, don't take it serious, but it's persistent and it goes on, and eventually some parents, like I would become the curious parent. I'm a curious person, so I would definitely eventually be like, hey, wait a minute, what is this? And then I would start asking the child a little bit, what are you talking about? Where is this? And so that's what some of those parents have done, and then they have, you know, followed the information and basically traveled to where the child described and whatever names the child could remember, and so found the place that the child apparently had a past life, and, you know, asked around and basically in that sense researched the whole idea and found that yes, there was someone here with that name. And come on, if you have like a 5-6-year-old talking, then obviously this little person was never there in this physical time. Otherwise the parents would have known about it. And why would a kid would never invent things like that? You know, that kids are not interested in in stuff like that. That's, you know, they have not that ego yet to try and create some lie to be special. So that comes later. And so clearly it's all true. And so I find that so amazing right now in these times. There's all these things happening and there's all these things popping up, and there is, of course, people that have had these near-death experiences way back in time. For example, there is quite a few that I've come across from the 80s that haven't talked about it till, like, you know, 20, 40 years later, because back in those days the world was not ready for it. We didn't have the internet with lots of information shared, so it was unheard of for the most part. And so when someone tried to share their experience, then even doctors would say that you shouldn't tell that to anyone. That was just a lack of oxygen in your brain or something. Give some lame short explanation that is completely unbacked by any knowledge or anything real, and basically making the person feel alienated. But another thing that all those people are getting out of this death experiences is that they come back changed. So people that were complete atheists, non-believers, even assholes, well, they come back so full of love, and all they want to do is to find ways how to unconditionally love and make their loved ones and also strangers feel this love. And so that's also very mind-boggling. That's also a mega huge thing. And so now we have this world that is in this, weird demic fear pandemic, afraid to die, apparently. And meanwhile, like the neurosurgeon Dr. Ibn Alexander says that death is actually a liberation, and if the dying involves pain, then it's extremely short-lived, and poof, you immediately are out of your body, even before the body completely dies. If the dying experience is so horrible and so terrible, then all these people who come back to tell about it, they basically actually didn't really suffer. There's very few people that spend some time in something that feels like an abyss. And apparently all of those who experience that, the minute that they sort of cry out for help or say, oh God, or whatever, then the light appears and takes them out of there. And people, of course, experience this happening in totally different ways. There's only a few things, but really profound things that they all have in common. And that is that once they get to, particularly once they get to this light, then they don't care. A lot of them, even before they get into any light, they don't care about that body that they left. Like, they don't have any interest in coming back. They, at their dying bed, they might have, prayed to God and wished that, oh, but I have these 2 little children, and I love my wife or husband, and I want to be here, I don't want to die, But as soon as they get out of their body, it's as if, well, they get so, they're no longer connected to this physical reality, and so their loved ones are not, like, immediately not on their mind like that anymore. And the light that they describe is a love that an unconditional, all-accepting love, so vast, so big, so profound, nothing but love, that they have never experienced before and can't explain, can't put in words. The same with the visuals that they see. They all say that once they come back here, then it's as if that other reality is much more real than this one, much more vivid than this one. There was one lady who said even the brightest of colors here suddenly seem as if with a gray filter compared to the colors there, that the colors there are alive. And so on and so forth, and there's so much more to it that people tell, but this they all have in common, including this, that they come back and they heal amazingly from whatever. That's like, I would say 90% of them, 89%, so yeah, 90% of them, it seems to me, they actually heal and recuperate completely from things that even from things like this Dr. Ibn Alexander, where it's like it's unrealistic that he should ever be a normal person again, and yet there he is, healthier than ever. And so that's another amazing thing. And so yeah, that's there's no reason to fear death. I don't fear death either. I actually, even before all this, I haven't feared death in an extremely long time. It's not a time to fear. It's the awakening time. And here's something for you to read while I take a little pause from here, because I got some work to do as well. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So let's move on with our awakening, because that is what it is. It is not a time to be in fear and, oh, I could die, or I could be so injured by some whatever virus. This kind of things, this kind of risks have always been here in all different shapes and forms, not just in form of viruses. You could anytime fall down the stairs and crack your brain, break your neck. You could anytime be struck by who knows what for accident, misery, illness, weird bug, bit you, whatever, you can end up being a vegetable in many different ways, not just via a virus. And the whole fear-mongering from the media is obviously the reason why people are so in fear. It's not reality. It's not because reality is that scary, really. So the only thing that makes reality really scary for the human beings is this parenting for adults that all the adults before my lifetime, at least this one, just have accepted. That's one of the things also growing up I couldn't believe, that the adults are all suffering in different ways, shapes and forms under this system that they didn't invent. So why are they following it? All of this kind of stuff, I get high on these times sometimes here and there. I feel like, yes, finally, and everything had to get so extreme, so extremely retarded before people start waking up and questioning things. And that's the majority I'm talking about, because the majority definitely is, the term sheeple. For years that's another term that I didn't know until somewhere in my 20s. I used to go around saying sheep people. And suddenly one day I met someone who said, oh, you mean sheeple? And I was like, what? And I thought, I got all envious. So I was like, wow, I can't believe I didn't come up with that. And the person was like, well, actually, I didn't come up with that. Apparently the 1% that rules our world came up with that. I was like, oh, okay. All right. Well, then it would have been even more cool if I had come up with that, because that just makes it suddenly really ugly, no? So, yeah. Well, anyway, and then we got this pharma industry. Our health is an industry. How insane is that? I mean, what kind of a retard species are we to allow? We're supposed to be the most intelligent species. I seriously doubt that. It's probably the dolphin and some other animals, they just don't have to show it off, they're so intelligent they don't need to do all these ego weird things that we do. So yeah, anyway, these are the weirdest times, and well, I don't know, to me actually they're not necessarily the weirdest times, because I thought already at 15 that, wow, this adult world is really weird. There's nothing to live up to, really. There's much more to live down to, and instead of fine-tuning my sensitivity I have to actually desensitize myself is what I was realizing. Lots of things I was realizing. And so when I was 15, I had a moment alone with myself. I believe it must have been a weekend because I was kind of home most of the day all by myself, and it was deep and quiet times, and I promised myself that I will never become one of these adults. I will keep this child thing alive. Back then I didn't know that there was something called inner child, so that could have been a good term for that. But never mind what it's called, but that's what I decided, that's what I promised myself. To not fall for the stupid illusion of some weird idea of being adult. So, but maybe now in this awakening we can finally all become really adult, or who cares, probably it's better to just all be children, aged children who haven't lost their innocence. And so,
the mechanic.
So yeah.
That mechanic.
This is because I have the phone sitting here, and maybe I should just unplug it. And actually, I have the phone charging on the laptop. When the laptop falls asleep, then it stops charging. So it's the second time that I'm recording this because the phone battery died before because of that. So now I saw the screen went black, so I touched it, and oops, somebody started talking. Did anyone guess? Did anyone notice? Did anyone recognize this voice? If so, let me know. Write down there in the comments who you know it was. Or who you think it was. So anyway. Yeah, so now we got it plugged over there. Yeah, 11% battery. I'm probably the only crazy person who uses my phone, right? When it's 11%, or are we all doing it? Killing the battery? I'm killing all the batteries on all my devices. I'm expert in killing batteries. If you need me to kill a battery, just send the stuff over. I'll kill it for you. So yeah, it is a time of awakening, and to that I would love to add that, it is our heart that is intelligent and not our brain. Our brain is actually more like computing. So another thing that I noticed, when was that? I must have been, 32, I think, when I did an IQ test. And I don't remember now exactly, but it was approximately something like this. I decided that I want to do an IQ test because I had this friend of mine who was always so fascinated about that stuff, and she would love to be a member of Mensa and blah blah and whatnot. And so eventually one day, actually years later, it was still on my mind. She had just been to visit me. I lived on Ibiza back then, and she had just been there in the summer to, not particularly to visit me, that's another story, whatever, with a bunch of Danish people. And so the subject came up again, and so I decided to try and make this IQ test. And as I was going through some of the first questions, I realized, wow, I don't feel really sharp for this shit today. Like, I should do this on another day when I feel better. And so I switched it off. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. Actually, I should do it to see what results I get when I feel the way I feel today. And then do it again on one of the next days when I feel like, okay, today I feel really sharp and awake, and my energy is good, and the health is up today, kind of thing. And so that's what I did, and I believe I got some 80 something on this bad feeling day. And then some days later I noticed, oh, this is the day that I feel really sharp and clear and good energy and fresh and all that. And so I sat down and I did the test again, and I had 146 or 146 or 148, I don't remember now. And so I thought, okay, well, that was actually I didn't know how big the difference was. I just thought that, okay, so what I did the other day must have been possibly bad, and what I have today is definitely, obviously, better. But if it was really good or anything like that, this was not really clear to me. So whatever, it is what it is. Eventually I heard that, coincidentally, at some point, I heard that Shakira had, I think it was 146 yeah, so that, okay, so she had 146, so I had 148. And the way that it was said was like, wow, as if she's like, oh, fucking genius or something. So I thought, wow, okay, so I guess that's then pretty good. They're probably exaggerating, but well, you know, I mean, if I can score much better on a day that I just feel more optimally fresh, which is then actually healthy, well, then what for nonsense? I mean, even when I don't feel fresh, matters of the heart, like, you know, solving problems, helping friends solve complications, whatever issues, that to me stood as an example that actually it doesn't matter how sick and tired I may feel, I can still do that very effectively, possibly the same effectively, because I'll be more calm if I'm a little bit tired. So the calm will actually make the whole process of helping with some complicated issues and problems much better. And so that is intelligence. I've always known, I feel like I've always known that this is intelligence. And so all that other stuff that was in this IQ test, I felt like, well, this is much more like calculating stuff. And I've always been a language person, and I'm an artist, and I of course have some friends that are totally opposite. They're not very creative, they're not artists, they're not very good with language, but they're extremely good and quick with numbers, calculating, figuring things out in that kind of sense. And so I immediately knew that, well, that's what the IQ test is, that's what that is. And so I'm not particularly good at those things. So I could have scored even more if I was, but I'm not. So I really had to, I had to really make an effort and really concentrate and really be like, okay, Mila, take this serious. How does this fit into there? And so, but yeah, I managed. I guess you manage anything if you really want. And now I feel like smoking again. So yeah, basically the brain is computing and the heart is the intelligent aspect of us. And another way that I have discovered how true that is that since about maybe 2 years time, bit less maybe than 2, but yeah, approximately 2 years time, I have developed this idea due to lots of the knowledge that I've accumulated and science that I've been listening to and stuff. So they advise, for example, there's something called HeartMath, which is really fascinating, and I'd love to go into a place where they have this equipment where you can sit and do your focusing and see on a monitor how well you're doing in synchronizing heart and brain. But so out of all these different things that I know, I have come up with my own way of doing things. And so let's say, when I'm faced with some kind of stressy situation, it could be the last time that it really stood out to me so hardcore how effective this was. It was someone sort of picking a fight with me. But I was in a position where I can't really explain that now because it's also private stuff. But I was in a position where I knew that if I just let the beast out, if I just let out this anger that was coming up in me, then this could go really crooked. And so I just knew that it wasn't a good idea. Because the situation was sort of mixed with it was kind of private but professional as well. And so, sometimes when you're in a situation where private and professional comes together in one, then that's So that was not the situation to let the beast out in, and I can get really angry, and I don't like when someone brings out that side of me, that's not necessary, that's just stupid. So I rather walk away. And so anyway, so I was in this situation where someone was really upsetting me and being a retard, and I just felt like, wow, I'm gonna explode. Like, when I get angry, once I get really angry, I don't care. I'll say whatever I feel like. And so in the past, when I was younger, I hurt some of the people I love the most with my anger because I would say bullshit things. I could be really hurtful. And so what I did this time, what I have discovered works like really wonders, is that instead of what I did in that moment, I'll just describe what I did in that moment. I was sitting and drinking a tea, and my anger was just fuming, and I thought, well, I'm gonna explode. And so just so then I thought of this, of oh my, go in your heart, be in your heart. And the minute that I just thought of that, just the second that intention was there, it made me get up with my cup of tea and actually move. And then I noticed that as I was doing that the moving was preventing me. It was using this energy on moving was taking some of the energy of the anger. And so I walked to the kitchen sink and I started cleaning my teacup. And as I was arriving to the sink, I was repeatedly going on in my head, telling myself, Mila, go back in your heart space, go back in your heart space, go in your heart space, go in your heart space. And then I arrived at the sink, and then I started talking. And then I noticed as I was talking that I wasn't talking angry. Instead, my anger in my heart turned into something that felt more like, I don't have the right word right now, but it was more sadness than it was anger. And it was love instead of fear. And so I found myself speaking through the heart, and instead of feeling really angry, I suddenly felt this kind of like a sadness, like some kind of thing like that, because I was speaking through the heart, like really from the heart, and I was fighting not to cry. And so that was really interesting. It was really interesting what came out of that, because I know myself enough throughout this life, and so I know like what would have happened. I know what kind of side of me, what kind of things, what kind of energy would have come out of me if I would have just stayed sitting there and let the anger get the best of me. And so this was amazing. What I witnessed that day was amazing, and everything immediately within a few minutes, less than 5 minutes, everything turned in my favor. Yeah. and it makes you brave. It makes you brave. It gets you away from your ego. It's really, 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 really something fascinating. And so I stick to this since some time now. And it really works. And another thing is that when you tell yourself to go in your heart space, then okay. The app crashed on me. So now I really gotta smoke. And anyway, I've made a cup of tea. So it all fits. Perfect. Like hand in glove. So, what was I saying? I was talking about the heart space and going in your heart space and what magic wonders that can do for you in your life. And so then there's this other thing that regarding that and things of the sort that I think is good to mention and share with other people, and that is that I've always been working on myself. I've always somehow throughout going from my childhood into my teens, I remember noticing it already then that I was extremely self-objective. I was constantly making efforts to be able to see objectively, but it actually came out of some discomfort, some insecurities, some challenges with the environment, with this and that, and so I developed that. So that's great. I think it was kind of hard to be such a serious child and such a serious teen. Instead of enjoying and having fun in my youth, I was extremely concerned. And but the thing that I don't want to say, because I know that also well, that through the last some years, it became extremely clear to me that, for example, the process, like something like this with the heart, with going in your heart space, before, normally, things will, how you say, someone will upset you, something will upset you, and you'll just start getting a bit upset, and you'll just start reacting, and in other words, actually making some decisions of what you're going to say and what you're going to do and whatnot, before you get to become objective. This usually comes after. We all know that. We do something in the moment, we say something in the moment, and later on we end up thinking about that moment, and suddenly we're like, I should have said, I should have done. We call that back smart, if I just translate it straight from Danish. So basically this takes time. It takes time from the moment that you realize that you don't want to do this anymore, from the moment that you realize that you don't want to let things get the best of you. It takes time. And in the beginning, so my experience of it, for example, was that it would just keep happening as it always did. And then afterwards I would think, I forgot to... I forgot to calm, back in the day it was I forgot to calm myself down, I forgot to count to 10, I forgot to whatever, all that. I forgot to become objective. But the past several years, it's become stuff like this, like for example that with the heart, that so the most recent, in the recent 3 years, I've been living with a very close friend. Probably one of my, maybe it is the closest person in my life now, actually. And there was a lot of challenges. There was lots of stuff. There was lots of there was lots of things in the constellation that were making things extremely difficult. And so he had a tendency to to do really upsetting things and basically pick arguments with me, and I would always fall for it. I remember in the beginning I was able to not take it personal and just sort of look at it from a distance sort of thing, or look at it objectively and not, but as the time went by, as the months went by, I suddenly couldn't do that anymore. Suddenly it felt like I'm making excuses for this person. And so suddenly I was being drawn into it. And I got drawn into it so much for a while, and then suddenly it occurred to me, I think in some few months, couple of months, it started occurring to me like, hey, Mila, hello? What are you doing? This is ridiculous. You're totally getting blinded, carried away here. And so I started becoming conscious of it. And so as it continued happening, I was now catching myself in it. And of course, in the beginning, it will take, I don't know, X amount of time. And you keep doing it and keep doing it. And suddenly that time goes shorter and shorter and shorter. And suddenly it would take 5 minutes of me entering the argument. And as I'm then hearing myself and feeling myself in this place that I don't want to be, feeling in these ways that I don't want to feel, within minutes I would realize it and be like, oh, you got me into this shit again, you got me into this, And so like that, I became faster and faster and faster and faster of recognizing this. And now I'm in a place where it's like it's pretty much a choice that I become aware that, okay, now this person is upsetting me. And so I might answer back as if I'm entering the argument once or twice, or maybe not at all. I might do it just once or not at all, and I will surely say that, look, now you're doing it again. Now you're doing so and so, and I don't want this, and do. And so these things that would escalate, or these wrong things that you could say and never take back, or these wrong decisions that you could make that would, cause something that you can't really undo. This stuff doesn't have to happen. This stuff doesn't have to happen. And in these challenging moments is the moment to remember and say, go in your heart space, go in your heart space. And there's this other thing to it that one must really understand, is that it is extremely subtle, the feeling. It's not like you tell yourself, go in your heart, and then, you're just in there and it's all love and you turn into Buddha or Jesus. No, it's very, very subtle. The feeling of it is very subtle. But once you observe the results that come out of it, and you know yourself well enough to know how you otherwise would have behaved or done things, that's where you see the difference. So it is in the longer run, or say the longer run and the bigger picture, that you're going to see what a megalithic difference it makes. The feeling of it in itself is so subtle. And that's also why I said that I would love to have this experience of the HeartMath Institute, where they do this meditative kind of thing where you focus yourself into synchronizing heart and brain. And then you have this monitoring thing that you can look at, and it's showing you how well you're doing. And so that's why, because the feeling of it is so subtle that you almost don't feel it, that's why I would love to try that. That's why I would love to have that visual thing that is showing me how fast I'm doing it, how well I'm doing it, and when I'm there. And then I would love to keep doing that, over and over, until I feel like I can recognize that, it is when I feel like this or like that. This is when I'm exactly in there, kind of thing. And so now that we have these awakening times, it will be, in my opinion, in my experience, it'll be so helpful to realize these things. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who knows this. And many times, in order for me to use something that I already know, I need to hear it from outside. I need some friend. I need someone to remind me of it. I need someone to say what I don't have access to when I'm in some state where I don't have access to my knowledge. And typically, if you're stressed or sad, or stress has so many different shapes and forms and levels and sizes, and anything that doesn't feel good is stress. Anything that doesn't feel good is somehow, one way or the other, somewhere in some of its component, it has some kind of anchor and fear. That took me a long time to make that one match. That took me actually years to make that match. And that reminds me of another thing that is related to it, and that also took me so many years to match, to really be able to see and identify, to really make it fall into place, was a friend of mine ages ago. She said, how was it? She was talking about something about taking responsibility. She was saying, I remember I was thinking that she's really being hard on herself. Yet at the same time, something in what she was saying it resonated so much with something in me, but yet from my mind approach, I couldn't, from this brain mind approach, whatever, I couldn't really make it perfectly fit in. So the stuff that she was saying was that to take responsibility is to realize that no matter what happens to you, no matter who does what to you even, it is your own responsibility. like, you only got yourself to blame. Not that you should blame yourself or blame anybody, but it's your responsibility. 100% full on. You have to take responsibility for whatever happens to you. So I thought of that a lot, and I thought, how can I be responsible for if someone, I mean, let's just take a really extreme let's take a really extreme example to really show what it was that was really mind-boggling, what kind of things it was that was totally mind-boggling me in this. Let's say that I'm walking down the street and some stranger runs up to me and maybe smacks me or something, hurts me somehow. And yeah, maybe because he wanted to steal my bag, or who knows, whatever, something like that. Something unexpected that you were in no way, shape, or form asking for. I thought, how does that make sense then? How can I then take responsibility for that, really? How am I responsible there, or what? And then years later, lots of things had happened, and I was standing in a situation where lots of really mean stuff happened to me. And it was basically just, having a network of people where too many of the people were not close friends either, but they were in my circles. And I'm a really open person. And so, like one of my best friends said when I started traveling again in my early 20s, said, I'm always worried about you, Mila, because you're such an open book. Someone speaks with you for like 5-10 minutes and they already know you so much. So if a person is really bad, they'll just already be able to figure enough out about you to maybe use you or something. And so thank God that I have a good intuition. Okay, I'm also naive, so yeah, because sometimes it has gone wrong, but but I also have a really good intuition. So then once really all this, lots of bad things were happening, and I was so sad, and I was so powerless, and I was so weak, and I was so at the bottom, and I was sadder than sad, more hurt than hurt. I felt beat, I felt torn, and suddenly in the midst of my lowest kind of times, I suddenly remembered this, and I suddenly could see it. I hardly know how to explain it. The only way to explain it would be that, well, if I was walking down the street and some horrible thing like that happened to me, well, then I'm responsible for me. I chose to walk down this street. Nobody forced me to walk down this. Nobody forced me to be right here, right now. Nobody forced me into these circles of people. Nobody forced me to be open, to just be who I am, authentic and true and pure and expressive and sharing who I am, basically. Nobody forced me to do any of that. So every step of every day is a risk in itself. And so that brings me back to where we are today. Every step of the way is a risk that you take. Just every breath you take is a risk that you take. You could inhale without knowing it, the most poisonous thing. And without, I mean, come on, that happened. That's what happened with the Black Plague. That's exactly what happened with the Black Plague. Some shit meteorite came flying from out of space and boom, landed here, and somehow from that, or however, there was some gases kind of thing released, and back in those days, in those areas, whatever in those areas, but back in those days, people were basically, instead of drinking water, they were drinking beer, and what they were eating was also not really healthy, and so they were not healthy. They were actually extremely unhealthy, and so it didn't take much to tilt to, last drop in the cup, and it overflowed. And so that's what happened. So it wasn't actually really a virus. You could call it a virus because they inhale something of poisonous air, poisonous gases kind of thing. and then they get sick similarly as you would get sick with like some horrible virus cult kind of thing. But so again, everything, every day, every second that you're alive is a risk that you're taking. Just coming here to this life, being born here as a human being, coming to planet Earth is a risk in itself. But now, if you were able to remember that actually, you know, you're not this body, that you're just a soul coming in here, some part of you is coming in here. You can't fit your whole soul and spirit into this body. so if you were to remember that, then you wouldn't have to be scared and of anything, and it wouldn't matter. You would remember that this is kind of a risk you take, but on the other side, it's not really a risk because you can't die. You can only create some bad karma that will make you, from the feelings of your heart, feel that you have to come back and set things straight, sort of thing. Or there will be loved ones that your heart will draw you to coming back because of them, or because you want to be part of the vibration, the energy that's going on here, and you want to be here participating in that energy to do your work, to do yours, to make it better. So these are the different types of reasons that you would come here for. Once you've been here the first experimental time. So, right? And so, still today, for so many people, this kind of talk is completely out there and too far out. But by now, there's just too much proof and evidence. And it is only us, our psyche, that needs to catch up with it. Like when someone who is, say, a typical classic old school scientist who does not want to believe in anything whatever, because, you know, I'm a pragmatic person, I need to see the things and make the evidence and do. If you can repeat that, what you just said is the reality. If you can show me that and keep recreating it 100 times, I'll start believing you. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not exactly how the full reality of reality itself, the complete, huge, big thing, how that actually works. And that's not, you're never gonna explain, you're never gonna come to the deeper understanding of things like that. So it's as simple as that. And so I think that I've said enough, actually, by now, to give the clues and the inspiration for the things of how they are. There's just no need to fear, and I guess if some of the things are unclear or blurred, and then please ask a question and I will answer all the questions in the comments. So yeah, I think I should finish for now because the time goes so quickly while I'm talking, and I could just talk forever and I'll just be repeating myself, and yeah. So thank you for listening. And remember, there's no need to be scared of anything. Just go back in your heart space. Practice that. You'll get better at it every day. You'll get there faster every day. You'll realize it faster with every time. And that will just do wonders in your life. And once you are there with this, the more you're getting there already from the beginning. Intention is the thing. Again, it's all subtle stuff. So you won't feel it like, wow, megalithically, but just that the intention is there of love and being in your heart. It just changes so much, and it has effect on your surroundings and thereby the entire world. You know, we're all connected and it's all connected. So feel free to drop any questions below. Ciao for now.